My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently? Jason, I'd love for you to tell us about your Company of Three Kings. I am one of the founding members, or one of my characters is, I should say. And then I have some other characters that are just randos that wander in and out and help out the Company of the Three Kings. But it's really terrific, and I'd love for our listeners to hear about it from you.
Yeah, the timing is good, too. So we're actually at something of a stopping point with the Company of the Three Kings, or at least a break point. It's my living campaign for Dungeon World. I run lots and lots of Dungeon World, and I was running into this problem where all these disparate player groups, and I mean, bear in mind, this is dozens and dozens of people, right? All these disparate player groups and all these different stories weren't really tied together in any way. They just kind of existed kind of by themselves, in a little bubble, like very cabined off from one another. And so I had the idea of creating this living campaign structure, which I'm calling the Company of the Three Kings. That's related to one of the adventures that led to the company's founding. This living campaign structure that basically is a lot like the Harpers in Forgotten Realms. That's probably the closest comparison. You probably don't know what that is, David, but in the Forgotten Realms setting, there's this group of very storied, powerful, influential adventurers who kind of are dispersed all throughout the world, and they occasionally meet back up together to discuss the things that they've witnessed and seen and things like that, right? And kind of share notes. This is the same idea. So I created this campaign structure, or this living campaign structure, whereby we keep track of all the characters who are part of the company. We keep track of their guild hall, as well as a common inventory sheet. So I have some stats. We started in December, or really truly, I guess we started in November, mid-November. But since mid-November, we have done 44 sessions of Dungeon World related to the Company of the Three Kings. That encompasses 36 different characters and 10 different adventures. There's a couple of unnamed adventures that help kind of found the company. There was also an unnamed Funnel World adventure that was part of it. And then the named adventures were the Dark Shard of Nemrath, Bleakwood House, the Castle of the Dreaming Doors, the Croaking Fane, Red and Pleasant Dreams, the Vault of the Purple Mane, the Sorrow, and the Seclusium of Loesch the Living. I have two more short wrap-up adventures to tack onto this. One's called Red and Pleasant Nightmares, and the other is called The Palace of Sorrow. They are just connected to the other two adventures with similar names, because there's a couple of little story threads I want to kind of wrap up with those. But otherwise, once those are done, we're taking a bit of a break, and we won't pick back up with company stuff hardcore in earnest until sometime in June or July. We'll be doing, little one-off Dungeon Worlds, between now and then, but so we've had a good run of it. It's been really great. Super fun. Just the features of it, I guess. I mentioned them briefly earlier, but there's the company book whereby each of the adventures has a name. So the people who were on the adventure called the Dark Shard of Nemrath, in the company book, those people are referred to as the Fellowship of the Dark Shard, right? The people who are on the Bleakwood House adventure, they're referred to in the company book as the Bleakwood House Cadets, and so forth. So in the company book, the characters are entered underneath whichever adventure they took part in, any of the adventures they took part in, and they kind of just put a few little notes about what they did in the adventure and things that they want people to remember about them. So that's a pretty cool thing. There's a guild hall document, which contains custom moves and other, I guess, aesthetic details of their guild hall, which is their common meeting place. And a lot of that stuff, what's really cool about that is it changes as the adventures get completed. So there are things they discover in the adventures that can be used, taken back to the guild hall and made available to other company members at other times. Sometimes those are things I've planned. Other times those are things that kind of come up in the fiction and we think as a group oh, that'd be cool to add to the guild hall. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then the inventory sheet is more of a meta thing, but basically characters can put stuff into this common inventory sheet that anybody in the company has access to. So you just, if you want to take something from the inventory sheet, you just make a note that you took it and then put it on your character sheet. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. Any idea how many individual players you have? I know you got 36 characters, but how many players is that?
If I take away duplicates, 30 players.
30, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's super fun. Thanks for asking about it. I didn't know if we were ever going to talk about it. I hadn't really planned on talking about it, but it's super cool. And what's really awesome is if you're a listener of this podcast and you get in on our gaming calendar in time, you can join us and be part of it. So we'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's great. I have every intention of making something similar for my campaign because I've got some players who don't necessarily want to play in play-by-post form, but they've already started a little bit, and they want to come back whenever I get back into town where we can play face-to-face. So
why don't you just add them to the company? I was hoping that we'd have other GMs running stuff in it, too.
I have to think about it and make sure. I bet my players who listen to this podcast are like, do it, but I got to make sure my world meshes with your world because I don't want it to get too weird.
Yeah. I don't have as many giant sandworms in my world, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think those have made an appearance in your world yet, but they should. They're fantastic. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is what should I be on the lookout for?
We don't talk about monsters very much on this podcast. Monsters and homebrewing monsters, that's a big part of the Dungeon World scene, just like making magic items is, right? Making your own adventures.
The aforementioned sandworms are my creation.
Well, they sound like Frank Herbert's creation, but okay.
No, no one knows that yet. They have different motivations, and they're not...
Okay, so what I want to talk about in this segment is the Dungeon World Codex. This is a thing, if some of our listeners, I have to imagine, are fairly new to Dungeon World. In fact, I've talked to a bunch of them who just came from D&D, and now they're playing Dungeon World. And so they may not know about this. On the Dungeon World website, there's this thing called the Codex. It's really neat because it's essentially just a repository of fan-made monsters. So you can go and search. They have so many different monsters. Like, you can just search in some keywords, and you're going to get, you may not get a perfect result, but you might get something close, right? Sometimes you get even more than you thought, like, 10 different gargoyles or whatever, right? So it's this really great resource for monsters. If you like a particular person's monsters that they do, I think you can search just the ones by that creator. You can click on their name and just see all the monsters they've done. And then finally, you can create your own. So in the Dungeon World book, in the back of the book, there are all those questions that you answer, and then you kind of fill out some stuff and to make a monster, right? It kind of to make the stat block. This automates all that. So you just go in and fill in the fields, you just answer the questions, and it generates how much damage it should do and all that other stuff. And so it's pretty cool. It's a really neat thing. And it also looks really nice. It looks like it's formatted like they are in the Dungeon World book. It's so cool. One of the awesome things about Dungeon World is the fact that you can homebrew cool stuff with it, right? Like, it's a system that's so good for that. Making your own compendium classes, making your own playbooks, making your own magic items and monsters. And this is a terrific tool for that. It's really the only tool you should be using.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is what here is not what it appears to be. So this week I want to talk about how to get into your character's skin a little bit. Whether you're the GM or the player, this is something that can be a little tricky to do if you haven't done it much, or if you feel like you're not very good at improv or whatever the case may be.
I'm sorry, do you mean like inhabiting them at the table?
Yeah, just doing something that makes them come to life in their own right, and not just you sitting at the table saying, I swing my sword, and then that's
right,
it.
Okay, got it.
This is particularly hard for the GM because he has so many characters to manage, and he also needs to make sure the players know which character he's playing at what time. Some kind of tips and tricks for this that I have used in the past are just to have either a ritual phrase or a particular gesture or something that my character always does before they speak or as they speak that kind of signals, oh, I'm in my character right now, and the other characters get that.
Can you give us an example of what you mean?
Well, so like if I'm GMing, I've got like an old man, I'll kind of bring my hands up underneath my chin and hold them out kind of like T-Rex arms and kind of hunch my back over, and I'll talk in a shaky voice or whatever.
Good.
And I'll refer to the players as young man or whatever a lot.
Right.
And just try and generally talk down to them. That's the classic old man thing.
Right, yeah.
Things like that. Jason, you've been doing this a really long time. I'm sure you've got some things that you could give, some pro tips.
Yeah, I have a whole sort of unified theory of GM prep, which I'm not going to go into here. Like, people who pay attention to what I do, they're aware of it. It's called 731. And the one part of 731 is, for your NPCs, you adopt one verbal tick one visual representation, like you do something with your body at the table, or you go with, like you said, like a phrase or like a thing they say a lot. You add that thing in. You just pick one thing. You don't need to do the whole thing. Doing more is great, but you just need like one little verbal tick or physical expression that represents the character. It's all the players need to get into your headspace, right? Like, you don't need to do much in role-playing games to create shared imaginary space, right? Detail a few little, environmental details, maybe three. Three is a good number. Have one verbal or physical tick for each NPC that you use to kind of express them. And sometimes it doesn't have to be even so over the top or comic or big. It can just be, maybe when this character talks to you, you lean in a little bit at the table, right? Like, you physically lean in, like, toward the player to kind of express that I'm a close talker, I'm dominant, I'm to be taken seriously. But if you don't feel comfortable talking in voices, you can just change the character of your voice a little bit to indicate a different character. So if you're a man and you're role playing a woman, maybe you just kind of soften your voice a little bit, kind of like I do with Urbina.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be much, that's for sure. It can be something as simple as talking louder if you think that your character is powerful, or talking quieter if you think your person is sneaky. Little things like that helps everyone at the table get what your character is about and what's going on, and it makes just the whole game a little bit more immersive.
Yeah, because the thing is, players fill in the gaps, right? Like, you give them a little bit, and players fill in all the rest of the gaps in their imagination. That's the key.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is What Here is Useful or Valuable to Me.
I'm excited.
I know. This is the episode, the one that you've all been waiting for, where we announce our finalists and our winner of the Dungeon World Magic Item Contest.
So we chose 2 finalists and 1 winner, and we're going to go over them now. David, tell us about the first finalist.
Yeah, runner-up for me, my personal favorite, is Mordecai Skull in a Bottle. This is by listener Luke. And it goes like this. How on earth a human skull managed to find itself inside a narrow-necked glass bottle is sure to remain a mystery, but one thing that is beyond all doubt is that this skull is very much alive and talking. Mordecai may be quite brisk at the moment, but I'm sure deep down what he really is looking for is a friend or two. He may one day even become an ally. Suggestions for playing Mordecai. He hates and won't answer questions, especially personal ones. Characters will lose favor with him if they try, but loves to be given tasks such as staying watch or distracting an NPC. He is able to conjure werelights in his eye sockets and wail a deathly howl, making him an effective torch/alarm system. And he is of a lawful good disposition and will often ponder the dichotomy between law and ethics.
That's so good. I love it. It's really good.
It's so great. Like, everything
it's
about
fun,
it.
yeah.
It's a great piece to have fun between the GM and the players. It's a little goofy, but it's also kind of useful. And you can take that a lot of different directions.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of like party editions that let the GM kind of be in the party a little bit, like, so it's not like hirelings are an okay example, I guess, but I love magic items that like have personality and can talk and stuff, because you have a little bit more freedom to act like irrationally or like a jerk.
Yeah.
Or just like,
it's like,
it's like if it was a hireling, you'd give him the boot. If a hireling acted like the ebony cat or acted like this Mordecai skull, you would probably be like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, we're done with you.
But because it's a magic item, you're kind of like, you kind of put up with it, and like,
and
you deal with it.
They'll put up with it until they need to disenchant something for a ritual, and then it's up. Right, yeah. Where's that skull in the bottle?
You're fucked, Mordecai. No, it's good. Listener Luke, so awesome. You did not win, unfortunately, but we love it. So,
all right, Jason, tell me about your runner-up.
Mine was actually also my personal favorite from the contest by our friend Fowler. I actually didn't realize this was Fowler's until I went back and looked at it. But our friend Fowler wrote one called Smoke of the Emerald Mountain Blossom. And here's how it goes. Dragons and all their kind love expensive and rare things. Nothing is more decadent than burning this flower, which only blooms at the storm-shrouded peak of the Emerald Mountains during rare moments of peaceful weather. When the contents of this vial are added to a flame, it produces a fume that most people would call pleasant. Any dragon or draconic creature that inhales the fumes will become intoxicated and generally adopt a friendly, talkative, even helpful mood. Each application only lasts for a short time, however, and a prolonged conversation may require several uses. Roll a d6 after each use. The vial is empty after the first roll of a 1. I love this so much. This might be one of my favorite magic items ever in Dungeon World. I love it. The reason why I love it is because it's very beautiful. There's a lot of really just beautiful imagery going on in this. This idea of this flower that is so rare because it only blooms in this really small window of time on the top of this peak, that's normally, hit by storms. But you have this little small window when the flower can bloom. I love that. I love this idea of dragons loving expensive and rare things, almost indulgently and selfishly, right? I like this sort of visual. It's a very sort of classic sword and sorcery-esque visual of a wizard, sitting in Congress with a dragon, and just kind of chatting about things and conversing with them. And another thing I really love about this is this seems like the sort of thing that might not even be per se magic. It's almost more like just a suggestive magic. I could envision a particularly clever wizard telling the dragon this story. This flower is so rare and you love rare and expensive things. Here, let me burn it. And the flower and the dragon being into that just because it appeases their vanity, right?
Yeah. The language that Fowler used to write that it's beautiful. It definitely paints a picture, and it's almost like poetry. It's really nice item.
Yeah, it's super. It's nice. Yeah, it's a great item. I love it.
Cool.
Now our winner.
Well, I want to say we had our eyes on this item from the very beginning when it was posted, and we've kept up with it since, and we keep coming back to it, and that's why it's the obvious choice.
The winner of the contest is listener Alan, and his item is called Ghost Horse.
So the way that this item goes, or this creature goes, is this gaunt white horse is wrapped and draped with dangling chains. You find the horse chained to a dungeon wall. When you free the horse from the dungeon, it stamps its hoof 3 times and will follow you. It follows at a discreet distance, perhaps hidden in shadows or invisible, but close enough for you to hear its rattling chains, and for animals and superstitious peasants to be unnerved by its presence. The horse can follow you anywhere, over water, into dungeons, through locked doors. As the horse is an animal, a druid could speak with it. When you call the ghost horse, it comes to you. When you mount the ghost horse, it will carry you wherever you wish to go. The horse flies faster than any mortal creature and can carry you through walls or other obstacles. While you ride the ghost horse, you are insubstantial and cannot physically interact with the world around you. When you dismount, the horse stamps its hoof twice. The horse will carry 1 rider at a time, any distance for a total of 3 trips. Once the horse has carried you 3 times, it goes beyond the Black Gate to its own final rest. The ghost horse can even carry you across the Black Gate. If you call the ghost horse from beyond the Black Gate, it will come to you and carry you back to the mortal world. If you ride the ghost horse from the mortal world into the land of the dead, it can take you directly to the soul you seek. Since the ghost horse only carries 1 rider at a time, you cannot bring someone back with you, but you could stay behind in their place.
I love it.
Yeah. That's a pretty sweet and useful item. It has enough restrictions that its powerful nature is controlled, in my opinion.
What I really like about this item is the visual of it is really quite striking. The first paragraph where he just talks about the horse, the condition that you find the horse in, and then the fact that the horse just follows you at a discreet distance, which is kind of creepy, right? The horse is just kind of creepy following you. I think it's weird. And other people maybe see it and are unnerved by it. I just love all that. I think it's so great. And then as far as its usefulness, yeah, it's a really interesting, useful item, that has, you're right. It's powerful, but it has some interesting restrictions on it.
Yeah. And all the great things, when I think about this as an item, all of those restrictions are part of the spout lore roll. If players don't get that 10 plus result, you might tell them how to use the horse, but you don't tell them the restriction.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, it's got just enough baked in lore and mystery to let you kind of play with it in that way a little bit. I also like that, like, its mechanics aren't like overly mechanical. You know, that's something I was looking at in this contest. If we ever run this again, listeners, take note. Something I was really looking at this contest was I wasn't interested in things that just give you +1 this or +1 that, right? I was interested in things that have more of a fictional thing to it. And we got lots of really cool stuff. We should say there were so many cool things that we got submitted to, and it was very, very hard to decide what to talk about each week, what to choose as finalist and winner. We had a couple of items that were really more like adventures than like items. Like they were practically their own like adventures in a box. So there's so much cool stuff. I'm really happy with how this turned out.
Yeah, me too. It was fantastic. So congratulations to listener Alan, and thanks for all the listeners who participated in our magic item contest. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
Okay, this is our ongoing comic strip AP featuring the adventures of, I was about to say Ramshackle Crow, Domenico Castafiel.
You can't resist just getting that jab in every...
So when we last saw Domenico, he had just had a conversation with the major domo of this estate. He's trying to find this item, and he believes it's on this estate. He believes that this gangster, Iotho Bruno, has it, and he was just talking to Iotho's major domo, Edvard, about maybe getting some help finding that. And Edvard agreed to help him with a couple of conditions. And so one of those conditions was that Domenico, who is noteworthy for being very handsome and charming, would like flatter Iotho and make Iotho feel good. Domenico, you've been asked to basically kind of hang out till the party's over and wait for Iotho to arrive and kind of flatter Iotho. Iotho's not here yet. So in this little gap of time, what are you up to?
So I'm looking around at all the guests, seeing if I can pick out anyone that I know or any scandals that are happening under the masquerade so that I can exploit them in the future. And I'm noting them to my unseen servant as I see them happen.
Okay. Have you picked up on anything yet?
Yeah. One of the nuns from nearby is actually disguised. I recognize her. She's having herself a good time, a wholesome time in the corner. And I note this to the unseen servant.
And give me discern realities as well.
Okay. 9.
So just describe yourself walking through the party, kind of tell me a few things you see, and then whenever you're ready, ask me your question.
So I'm walking through. I'm kind of talking low under my breath, so only my unseen servant can hear me. And I wave politely when people recognize the sigil, the crest that's on my...
You're very bad at being at a masquerade ball, by the way.
I know. I'm the worst.
So.
But everyone has to respect me because they know who right. I am. They can't feign ignorance.
Okay, very good.
I think that's why I do it. It's one of those things. I can't stand to just be considered part of the common people.
Well, let me ask you a question. It's a good question. We could do actually. You're a wizard, right?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? Like, how did you get to be a user of magic? Like, did you study with someone? Is this a self-study thing? Just how'd that happen?
It's always been a part of our family tradition that each member of the Castafiel family would have some kind of education that goes beyond your basic book learning as far as your numbers and your letters. We get elected kind of by our elders, the uncles and aunts and mothers and fathers to what kind of learning they think would best suit us and what would best serve the Castafiel family. So it was selected for me that I would learn the dark arts of magic, and that Urbina would learn the art of more subtle manipulation, like a kind of assassin school or infiltration school kind of.
Manipulation, trickery, that sort of thing.
Right, because as a kid, she was just terrible about this kind of thing. She could fool adults into believing things when she was 6 years old that probably a grown person couldn't trick adults into believing.
Well, so you seem like a very charming person as well, and I would wonder, what aptitude did you show as a child that made your uncles or whatever, your aunts, think that you'd be good at magic?
So it was actually just my charming nature that allowed me to convince them that that's what I wanted to do. Kind of just let me pick. And I had been fascinated with magic ever since I was small. My uncle, he was the wizard of his generation, and he would always just do the most wonderful and imaginative things with his magic. He would come to a birthday party, and just that's when the party would start. So this party that I'm wandering through right now is just so mundane compared to the things that he would throw and the things that I'm used to.
Go ahead and ask your question.
What here is useful or valuable to me?
So to the extent that part of your mission right now is to charm Iotho, who's not on scene yet, by the way, you see a crowd gathered round a, quote, magician doing very basic sleight of hand style illusions, right? Pulling out lengths of cloth, from their palming coins, having birds fly out of their cap, that sort of thing, right? Really, really basic stuff, not actual magic, right? Perhaps, there might be a chance for you to go in there and show them something real.
Okay, yeah. Let me think about that for a minute.
Well, while you're thinking about it, at a certain point, some trumpeters come in, and this is very Iotho, very ostentatious, and they begin blaring out really bright fanfare to announce Iotho's arrival.
Okay, well, how about I help them and do a little magic at the same time?
Oh, okay. What'd you have in mind?
So I think that Iotho needs better than just trumpets and a little fanfare. I want to put his name in the sky.
Okay.
Bright colored lettering for everyone to see. Those who can read, at least.
All right, very, very good. Well, this crowd, they can read, right? So it'll read like outside the window, or are you gonna write it in the in the ceiling, like above the chandeliers of this ballroom?
In and around the chandeliers, the light that comes out of it will actually reflect very nicely in the chandeliers.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, so this is a cantrip you're doing.
This is a cantrip, yeah.
Go ahead and cast it.
Okay, 8. So I gotta pick condition. After it is cast, the spell is forgotten. You cannot cast the spell again until you prepare spells.
Okay, perfect. And which spell was that?
So this is the cantrip. Prestidigitation.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, describe your spell. What happens?
Right. So it happens as I describe. But first, I walk up in front of the quote magician, and I say, "Move over. You're embarrassing me with your presence. You're embarrassing Iotho a little more. Let me take care of this for you." And I wave my hand in front of him, and it's as if he disappeared because I just made it seem like he's invisible.
Okay,
but that's only to the crowd. Like to himself, he is still perfectly visible, and he walks off in shame. And then
everyone goes, "Oh,
yeah,
hubbub, 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 hubbub."
Yeah, and then with a flourish, I shoot sparks of red and gold out of my fingertips, and they go up into the chandeliers and interweave between them, making the lights dazzle, and then they hover over Iotho, and it says, "The master of the house, Iotho Bruno."
There's a thunder of applause in the ballroom, which echoes all across the arched ceilings of this marble, covered room. And once it dies down a little bit, you hear clapping from behind you, like a last lingering clapping. And you hear a voice that says, "Bravo, bravo, just fantastic, perfectly fantastic." And then you turn to see Iotho. Shall I describe him now, or should we go next session?
Let's go to the next session.
Okay.
That just leaves one last question. Jason, who's really in control here?
That would be the Gauntlet gaming community. We can be found on Google Plus by going to the community section and searching for The Gauntlet. We are also on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. We run lots of games, including the aforementioned Company of the Three Kings Dungeon World games on Gauntlet Hangouts. Also can be found on G Plus and on Meetup. And if you would give us a 5-star review on iTunes, listeners, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, thanks, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show.
Bow, bow, bow. Okay, sorry. Okay. Aren't they called Arakeen sandworms?
No one knows that yet because no one has.
Oh, see, look,
no one's
I'm totally
actually
calling you on it. Don't edit that out. Keep that in there.